Hi, I'm Ben Bristow from
Pointblank Music School.
and this is DJ Tips and Tricks. This technique is called the Aquaman scratch, and it involves a specific set of movements with the crossfader and the hand on the jog wheel or the platter. And what the hand on the platter is doing is going forward, backwards, forwards, and then backwards, forwards, backwards. And the crossfader is dividing up those parts so that you get 6 separate sounds. The crossfader is actually doing shut, tap, open. So it's effectively like a double click flare scratch. Push the sound forward and shut it off. Then pull the sound back and do a transformer click. And then push the sound forward again. So that's the first half of the scratch. So it's... Then I do the opposite. So when I pull back, I shut the sound off. Then do a transformer click forward. And then pull the sound back. So when you put it all together, you get... I'll just give an example of that over a beat. The twiddle involves using your middle finger and your forefinger and thumb to flick the crossfader open and shut really quickly. The closed fader version is where the fader starts shut. Your middle finger is the one that first opens and shuts the fader. And then your forefinger follows on and does the same thing. So each direction I'm moving this sound, I'll get 2 sounds. So 1, 2, 3, 4. If I start with the fader open, now what happens is I get a sound before shutting the fader. So the first sound you hear is the noise moving forward, and then you're closing that off with your thumb. Then you're flicking with this finger to get the second noise, and then you're pushing the fader open with your forefinger. So effectively the fader's going shut, open and shut, open, like that. So and the key thing is always mainly the fader's staying open, but you're just temporarily flicking it shut and open. The crab scratch is very similar, so that can be either 3 or 4 fingers. If I'm doing the closed fader version, ring finger, middle finger, first finger, so, and then the same on the way back. Again, if I start with the fader open, now I would get 4 sounds, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. The military scratch is a specific combo of stabs, which are this technique where you're pushing the sound forward and cutting it in on the way forward, but not hearing the pullback. And then forward, backward, forwards, baby scratches. So if I do a stab followed by a forward, backwards, forwards, if I put that together, I get... What I can do is add in 2 stabs. So I get 2 of them and then a forward, backwards, forwards. Really, the hand on the platter or the jog wheel is just going constantly like this. So if I add the fader, over a faster beat, obviously you want to be doing it a smaller movement to get in time with it. So if I give you an example of that. And occasionally you can mix it up and release the sound. If I do it with a different sound, you know, you can do it with kick drums. The flare scratch is where the crossfader starts open and you're putting a silent gap in the middle of a sound. So as I move this sound forward, I'm going to shut and open the crossfader quickly. So it creates a gap in the middle of that movement. And if I do the same on the way back, I'm now getting 4 sounds from moving forward and backwards. I've got the fader set to sharp so that it makes a cut as soon as I touch that edge. It's not fading, it's just cutting out completely. So that's known as a single click flare. If I do a double click flare forward and backwards, that's known as orbits or an orbit scratch. You don't have to come out into that silent gap before my sample. If I stay in the middle of the sound, it sounds a lot more fluid because you hear the change of direction. If I do pull it back into that gap, obviously then I've got a silence at either end of it. I can link that to chirp scratches, which is, so if I do a double click flare, then a chirp, I can link those together. So if I do that over a beat, one trick that I often use is where I get a sample or a sound in isolation from a track, and I'll have it on my other deck and add some effects to it so that I can layer it over the track itself. I've got that sample there at the start of the track, so could be even some of these samples at the beginning of this track. So actually one way of doing this mid-set, if I like, if I press and hold beat sync, it will load the track playing on that side, on this side. And now it's got that hot cue because it's got hot cue auto load set to do automatically. And it's loaded the hot cue because I've got hot cue set to load automatically. So now while that track was playing to my audience, I've loaded this track. I just pressed and held beat sync. Now I've got this sample on the other deck. So what I could do is let that play and add a bit of an effect to this, like an echo or something. So I'm going to apply an echo to the crossfader. If I found like an instrumental section of this, I could then layer this. Preference that you can set is whether your hot cues load automatically or whether you choose to load them for each track. So if I go into my menu here, by default, you'll probably find that hot cue auto load is on. That means every time you go to a new track, it will load that track's hot cues. I might want to turn that off so that when I load a new track, it will keep any existing hot cues that were loaded to the buttons, but allow me to play a different tune. So I'm going to turn that off. Let's say I choose a track and I'm going to set a hot cue on it. That, for example. So I'm going to set that as hot cue B. If you notice, when I go to the new one, it's kept these hot cues that were on the buttons. So if I now set a different hot cue on here, something like that, so I'll press C. Now I've got 3 different hot cues, and each one of these is from a different track. Generally, when I'm setting hot cues, I might be listening for little interesting drum loops or drum fills, vocals on their own. Something like that is perfect because it's an isolated vocal. Now what I've got is hot cue A is this track. Hot cue B is this. C is this track. And D is... So what I would often do is turn off quantize because it's actually restricting how quickly I can trigger these. Now it's a question of like doing a mashup using these different cue points. So let's use that as a drop. So now I know that that one drops me back into a main new section of a tune. So I can just sort of play around with these and use these to create fills basically. So if I start with the drop, then if you want to learn more tips and tricks like this, check out pointblank.com for information about all of our courses and degree programs.